Now to the politics of climate change. Former Vice President Al Gore, writing in an upcoming edition of Rolling Stone magazine, takes President Obama to task in an article titled Climate of Denial. Mr. Gore writes, President Obama has thus far failed to use the bully pulpit to make the case for bold action on climate change. He goes on to argue that the president has not defended the science against the ongoing, withering, and dishonest attacks. Gore's article has forced a largely internal debate into public view. We get three takes on that from Glenn Hurwitz, who works on environmental issues at the Center for International Policy, Daniel Weiss, the Director of Climate Strategy at the Center for American Progress, and Ken Green, who studies environmental policy for the American Enterprise Institute. Glenn Hurwitz, is Al Gore right?
He is right. Unfortunately, environmentalists got the sense that President Obama was not fully fighting for the climate and for the urgent environmental needs that we have during the debate over climate legislation, when he cut side deals with the oil industry, with the coal industry, with the nuclear industry, without getting anything in return in terms of a commitment to support a cap on pollution or support investments in clean energy jobs. That was the rumor that he was seeing other people, but we really got confirmation when he embraced a broad agenda of drilling for oil offshore in the Gulf, now looking to do it in very sensitive ecological areas in Alaska. We saw it when he opened up huge areas for coal mining in Wyoming. That's about 30 times the amount of coal mining as clean energy that his administration has installed. And he's also delayed several major Clean Air Act regulations, both regarding climate and also ones that will have major climate benefits, but are primarily aimed to protecting public health, like mercury, smog, and soot. So there's been a real series of attacks on the environment coming from the Obama administration. And I think I'm really happy to see Vice President Gore come out and take the leading edge on this.
Daniel Weiss, you think the president's getting a bum rap?
Yes, I think that Glenn is looking at the glass and seeing it's 1/4 empty when it's really 3/4 full. President Obama has done more to reduce global warming, pollution, and other toxic pollutants than any other president. We've gotten $90 billion invested in clean energy as part of the recovery package, which has created tens of thousands of jobs. We have the first improvement of fuel economy standards since 1987 that will save close to 2 billion barrels of oil and reduce global warming pollution by nearly another billion tons. Where we've been disappointed is in his inability to help get 60 votes in the U.S. Senate, a supermajority, for a program that would reduce global warming pollution. And, you know, important to remember, this took place in the midst of the worst economy in 80 years. There's never been an environmental law that's been passed, a major environmental law that's been passed with unemployment above 7.5%. And unemployment last year and the year before, when he was trying to pass this law, was, a third higher than that.
Ken Green, are we even having the right argument?
Well, this is going to be surprising, but I actually agree a little more with Dan here. I think the president's getting a bum rap on this one. I could wish he'd been a little less active, in fact, on climate policy, but I think it's clearly a sort of a pre-election stalking horse.
Why do you wish he
Because I think a lot of the policies have been bad and will portend worse for an economy that is already barely in recovery and is staggering along in its recovery, such as letting the EPA regulate greenhouse gases. But I think it's clearly a political move to set the stage, the left environment stage for the 2012 election. They're staking out the position on the far environmental side, Al Gore being the leader of that position, to draw the debate in that direction. I think we'll see that throughout. As we approach the election, you're going to see that on both sides of virtually every issue, staking out the extreme to make the median look more reasonable.
Should there be a political calculation involved in this?
Well, if there is a political calculation involved, I think it argues very strongly for standing up to the polluters and investing in clean energy and programs like reforestation and public land protection. The reason for that is
something you say this administration isn't doing.
Something which the administration has not been doing enough of, and certainly in many cases I disagree with Dan, because it was disappointing to see him not fight hard for climate legislation. But what really hurt was using his administrative power to open up vast areas for new coal mining, new oil drilling, and much of that coal is actually going to China. But I think the reason where politics comes in is environmentalists are really disappointed about what President Obama has been doing. And they're now up for grabs. They're either not going to turn out for the polls or, we'll see what happens on the Republican side. But the reality is it's going to be the number one thing that's going to decide this election is the economy. And if President Obama isn't making sufficient investments in clean energy and ecological restoration, he's not going to be able to generate the economic growth and job creation that we need. Every dollar invested in wind power and solar panels and reforestation creates 2 to 3 times more jobs than investing in fossil fuels.
I think that you're really missing the point here. The difference between President Obama and Vice President Gore can be measured in inches. The difference between those two and the Republicans can be measured in miles. In 2008, President Obama and then Senator McCain had essentially the same position to reduce global warming pollution. In the coming election, it's very possible that the person running against President Obama is going to deny climate science. They're going to deny that a problem exists, let alone have a solution to solve it. That's a huge difference, and that's very unfortunate. In my view, that's something that the media ought to really be focusing more on, rather than Vice President Gore's disappointment in the fact that President Obama is not giving enough speeches about global warming.
And in fact, to correctly characterize Vice President Gore's argument, it was more an attack on the media for not making the case than an attack on President Obama.
98 scientists here, 2 scientists there against, saying that doesn't happen, and they both get equal time.
Are we having the right argument? Are the climate skeptics being given too much, too little attention?
We're beginning to actually have the right argument, which is really interesting. You have Andy Revkin at the New York Times, an environmental reporter, seriously upset over the fact that the UN IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, let a report on renewable energy be written by the Sierra Club. And this is a huge scandal of unprecedented proportions.
Is that true?
And some in the environmental left reporting community are furious. They are livid over what's been done and the discrediting that's going to happen to the entire UN environmental movement. So I think now we are beginning to have the right debate. It's no longer, oh, there's only a few cranks and, oh, there's a few people with tinfoil hats. There's a real problem with the politicization of climate science, and now if we have that debate, I think that's great.
But Ken, that politicization has occurred on the right. The National Academy of Sciences just released a report 2 months ago that found that 96% of all the global warming studies that have been peer-reviewed by scientists were all pointed in one direction.
It takes two to tango. It takes two sides to tango.
Increased emissions are leading to global warming, and we've seen just the story with Azan right before here. The flooding in Minot, North Dakota, is the exact kind of effects that scientists told us for years we're going to see, and now we've seen extreme weather in 2011 and 2010 that is record-breaking.
Glenn Horowitz, you're never going to agree on this point about this, but let me ask you this ask it this way, which is how much of this, whether you believe there should be government action or not, how much is the public clamoring to change? How much can they stomach, especially at a time of economic stress?
Well, I think the public needs it, and we
also need broccoli, but we don't all like it.
Right, that's true. But I think what Vice President Gore was saying in the article was that it's hard for just the environmental community to stand up against the entire Republican Party, against the fossil fuel lobby with all their money, that there needs to be leadership from the White House. Historically, that's how we've made environmental progress, to pass the Clean Air Act, to pass the Clean Water Act, to protect public lands and national parks. And without that kind of leadership, we're not going to get the agenda that we need. And in terms of just day-to-day putting bread on the table, like I said, revitalizing the economy means investing in clean energy. It means investing in ecological restoration. And in order to do that, we're going to need leadership from the White House. That's how it's been accomplished in the past. And I hope President Obama realizes that we're in a new economic paradigm where the country that wins the future is going to be the country that wins the race for power.
Is that realistic, Daniel Weiss?
Absolutely, and that's exactly what President Obama has not only been saying, but more importantly has been doing. In addition...
As much as he should?
As much as he has been able to accomplish with, Congress has blocked him because of a wall of opposition from Republican senators.
That's why I asked whether this is realistic.
It is, but remember also, politics is the art of the possible. Now, there was just a survey released by Yale University a couple weeks ago that found overwhelming majority of Americans, including a small plurality of Republicans, all support action to reduce carbon pollution that causes global warming. So it's not a question of the public. It's a question of you have a political party, the Republicans, is the only major political party in any Western democracy that is denying climate science. That wasn't true 4 years ago or 3 years ago. In fact, John Huntsman, Newt Gingrich, and Tim Pawlenty all did ads saying we must reduce global warming. And now they're all appealing to their hard right of their party.
Ken Green is shaking his head.
Well, with all respect, this whole language about the new green economy is silly. If you look at the experiences of all of the countries in Europe that have tried it, they have found it economically unsustainable, have lost jobs on net, and are now backing away from their subsidies. California, a world leader in environmental quality, everybody agrees with that. Look at their job situation. Look at their economy.
But
this
Ken,
idea
as
that this idea that by renaming it, well, we're in a new paradigm. I'd like a new paradigm where gravity is less than it is. My scale would thank me. But, you know, you can't declare a new paradigm just by fiat and pretty words.
I have to ask you all a very brief final question, which is what would you like to see the president do, starting with you, Ken?
I'd like to see the president focus on getting people back to work. Unless the economy is prosperous, people are not able to afford environmental protection. It's when people feel prosperous, they will set aside forests, they will protect streams, they will protect the air. When people feel needy and that they're not doing well, they put aside environmental issues. If you care about it, you want us to be prosperous.
Oh, Glenn Hurwitz, what would you like to see the president?
I think the number one thing he has to do is enforce the laws that already exist and use his tremendous administrative power to implement protections against mercury, against soot, smog, and especially carbon pollution. He has the power to do it. He can do it. He should do it as fast as possible so we can clean up the air, protect people's health, and save the planet.
Realistically, what would you like to see the president do?
All the things that Glenn said, which will create jobs according to studies by universities. In addition, issue fuel economy standards so cars get 60 miles per gallon by 2025. That will create jobs, save millions of barrels of oil. In addition, set a new ozone smog standard that will protect public health, save kids from having asthma attacks during the summer.
Daniel Weiss, Glenn Hurwitz, and Ken Green, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.